The dark ships came from nowhere, blocking out the stars. They were huge, each one the size of a small moon. Their black metal hulls had strange markings that glowed with purple light. These were the ships of the Korthak Empire, and they had come to conquer another world. Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His red eyes looked at the blue planet spinning below. This world would be easy to take. The beings who lived there were weak and primitive. They called themselves humans. The Korthak had been conquering worlds for 300 years. Every race they met fell before their mighty fleet. The crystal people of Zephyr lasted only 3 hours. The fierce warriors of Drakmor gave up after seeing just one Korthak ship destroy their greatest fortress. No one could stand against the Empire. Vexthul smiled with his sharp teeth. His fleet had 50 giant warships. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Their shields could stop any weapon known in the galaxy. The humans had only 12 small ships made from old cargo haulers and mining vessels. This would not even be a real fight. On Earth, panic spread like wildfire. People watched the news, as cameras showed the alien fleet hanging in space near the moon. The massive ships were so big they could be seen with the naked eye from Earth's surface. Children cried in their mothers' arms. World leaders met in emergency sessions, but they all knew the truth. Humanity had no chance. The message came at dawn. It was broadcast to every radio, television, and computer on Earth. The alien voice was cold and mechanical. Humans of Earth, you will surrender now. You have 1 day to give up completely. If you refuse, we will destroy your world and everyone on it. This is your only warning. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the UES Defiance. He was 35 years old with brown hair and tired eyes. His ship was humanity's newest warship, but it was still just a converted cargo vessel with guns bolted onto the sides. The Defiance had a crew of 43 brave souls who knew they might never see home again. Morrison listened to the radio chatter from Earth Command. Politicians argued about surrender terms. Military leaders talked about the hopelessness of their situation. The alien ships were too big, too powerful, too advanced. Earth's weapons would barely scratch their hulls. "Captain," said Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, his tactical officer, "Earth Command is preparing to broadcast our surrender. They want all ships to return to port and wait for orders." Morrison looked around his bridge. Chief Engineer Lisa Park worked at her station, trying to squeeze more power from their old engines. Communications Officer Ben Hayes monitored alien transmissions, his face pale with worry. Pilot Kate Sullivan checked their flight path, ready to take them anywhere Morrison ordered. "Sir?" Rodriguez waited for an answer. Morrison stood up slowly. He had joined the Space Navy to protect Earth and its people. Now politicians wanted to hand over his world to alien invaders without firing a single shot. The thought made his stomach turn. "Cut all communication links with Earth Command," he said quietly. "Sir?" Rodriguez looked confused. "You heard me. Cut the links. Set course for the alien fleet." Lisa Park looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, that's suicide. We can't fight all those ships." "Maybe not," Morrison said. "But we can show them what humans are made of. We can make them remember us." Kate Sullivan turned in her pilot seat. "Where exactly do you want me to take us, sir?" Morrison walked to the front window of the bridge. The alien ships hung in space like black clouds, waiting to destroy everything he loved. His crew was scared, but they were also angry. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might die. Now they would have the chance to die fighting instead of hiding. "Take us straight at their biggest ship," he said. "Maximum speed." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lisa Park smiled. "I can give you all the power we have, Captain, every last bit." Ben Hayes nodded. "I'll jam their communications if I can." Sam Rodriguez checked his weapons. "Our railguns are loaded and ready." Kate Sullivan's hands moved over her controls. "Course laid in, sir. Ready when you are." Morrison sat back in his captain's chair. The Defiance began to move, turning away from Earth and toward the alien fleet. Behind them, their homeworld prepared to surrender. Ahead of them, 50 alien warships waited like sleeping giants. "This is Captain Morrison to all crew," he said over the ship's intercom. "We're going to fight, not because we can win, but because someone has to try. History will remember what we do today, make it count." The crew worked at their stations with new purpose. They checked weapons, sealed hull breaches, and prepared for battle. They were scared, but they were also proud. When the aliens came to destroy their world, humanity would not go quietly into the dark. The Defiance accelerated toward the alien fleet. It was one small ship against 50 giants, but it carried something the aliens had never faced before. It carried the human spirit, and that spirit refused to give up without a fight. Bexthul watched the small human ship approach on his displays. He was curious about this strange behavior. Why would they attack when surrender was the only logical choice? Perhaps the humans were even more primitive than he thought. "Send one destroyer to eliminate that pest," he ordered his crew. "Make it quick." The battle for Earth was about to begin. The Korthak destroyer moved toward the small human ship like a hunting beast. It was 5 times bigger than the Defiance and armed with plasma cannons that could melt steel in seconds. Captain Zek Vor commanded the destroyer and felt amused by this easy task. He would vaporize the human pest and return to the fleet before his meal grew cold. Captain Morrison watched the alien ship approach on his screen. It looked like a massive black arrow with glowing purple lights along its sides. The weapon ports were already opening, ready to fire. "Distance closing fast," reported Kate Sullivan from the pilot seat. "They'll be in firing range in 2 minutes. "Weapons ready, Captain," said Sam Rodriguez. "But sir, their ship is so much bigger than ours." Morrison nodded. He knew the odds were terrible, but Lieutenant Rodriguez had been studying alien technology for months. The young officer had noticed something important about how the aliens fought. "Rodriguez, tell me about their shields again," Morrison said. Rodriguez pulled up his data on the main screen. "The Korthak use plasma energy shields, sir. They're designed to stop energy weapons like laser cannons and plasma beams. Every civilized race in the galaxy uses energy weapons now. But we don't," Morrison said with a small smile. "No, sir. We still use old-fashioned bullets and explosives. Kinetic weapons that most races gave up centuries ago." Lisa Park looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, I've been working on our ammunition. I packed the railgun rounds with depleted uranium cores and explosive tips. If their shields aren't programmed to stop solid projectiles, they might go right through," Morrison finished. It was a crazy idea, but it might work. The aliens expected to fight other advanced races with energy weapons. They had never faced humans who still used bullets and bombs. The Korthak destroyer opened fire first. Bright purple beams shot from its plasma cannons, streaking across space toward the Defiance. The crew held their breath as the deadly energy approached their small ship. The plasma beams hit the Defiance's hull with tremendous force. The ship shook and alarms rang throughout the bridge. But when the light faded, the Defiance was still there. The alien weapons had burned through the outer armor but failed to penetrate deeper. Captain Zekvor stared at his tactical display in confusion. His plasma cannons should have cut the human ship in half. Instead, they had barely damaged its primitive hull. What kind of armor were these humans using? "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "their hull appears to be made of layered metal plates with some kind of heat-resistant coating. Our plasma beams are designed for energy shields, not this crude armor." Morrison felt hope rise in his chest. Their simple steel plating and heat-resistant tiles were holding against alien superweapons. It was like wearing thick leather armor against a sword when the enemy expected you to have an energy shield. "Fire all weapons," Morrison ordered. The Defiance's railguns spun up with a high whining sound. Magnetic coils accelerated solid metal slugs to incredible speeds. At the same time, missile tubes opened and launched explosive rockets toward the destroyer. It was humanity's answer to advanced alien technology. Throw heavy objects very fast and blow things up. The railgun rounds hit the Korthak shields first. The purple energy barriers were designed to deflect plasma beams and laser fire, but they had no effect on solid metal slugs traveling at enormous speed. The uranium-tipped rounds punched through the shields like they weren't even there. The explosive-tipped bullets smashed into the destroyer's hull, detonating inside the alien ship. Explosions ripped through corridor after corridor. The missiles followed seconds later, their warheads designed to crack open asteroid rocks. They tore massive holes in the destroyer's armor. Captain Zekvor felt his ship shake as explosions echoed through the hull. Damage reports flooded his screens. The humans had somehow bypassed his shields completely. Their primitive weapons were tearing his advanced ship apart. "Impossible," he whispered. "How can bullets defeat our technology?" On the Defiance, the crew cheered as they watched the alien destroyer list to one side, trailing fire and debris. But Morrison knew this was just the beginning. "One down," he said. "But they have 49 more ships out there." Admiral Vex Thule received the damage report from the destroyer with growing alarm. A single human ship had crippled one of his warships using weapons that belonged in a museum. His tactical officers scrambled to understand how this had happened. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the humans use solid projectile weapons. Our shields were never designed to stop physical objects moving at high velocity." "Kinetic weapons?" Vex Thule had heard of such things in ancient history texts. "But no civilized race has used those in 1,000 years. The humans appear to be uncivilized, sir. They fight like barbarians from the Dark Ages." Vex Thule studied the tactical display. The small human ship was moving in an unpredictable pattern, making it hard to target. Its pilot seemed to understand that the massive Korthak ships were designed to fight other large vessels, not tiny fighters. "Send 3 more destroyers," he ordered. "Surround that ship and destroy it." Kate Sullivan saw the new ships moving to intercept them on her display. "3 more coming in fast, Captain. They're trying to box us in." "Then we don't stay boxed," Morrison said. "Full speed ahead. Take us right between them." The Defiance accelerated toward the gap between 2 approaching destroyers. Kate pushed the engines to their limit, using her skills as a former racing pilot to thread the needle between the alien ships. The destroyers opened fire as the human ship passed between them, but their shots hit each other instead of their target. Morrison's crew fired back as they passed, their railguns and missiles finding weak spots in the alien hulls. Within minutes, 2 more Korthak destroyers were damaged and drifting. The third retreated, its captain unwilling to face the mysterious human weapons alone. Admiral Vex Thule watched in disbelief as his ships fell one by one to a single primitive vessel. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Korthak Empire had found an enemy they couldn't easily defeat. The small human ship continued its impossible fight, proving that sometimes old ways were better than new ones. Admiral Vex Thule stared at his battle display in growing anger. 3 of his destroyers were now floating wrecks, torn apart by a single human ship that should have been destroyed hours ago. His crew looked nervous as damage reports continued to arrive. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. "Send 6 cruisers," he ordered. "Heavy assault formation. End this embarrassment now." The massive Korthak cruisers moved into position around the Defiance. Each ship was twice the size of the destroyers and carried enough firepower to level a city. Their captains were experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. They would not make the same mistakes as the destroyer crews. Captain Morrison felt sweat on his forehead as he watched the new ships surround them. His crew had been fighting for 6 hours straight. They were tired, running low on ammunition, and their ship was held together by emergency repairs and pure determination. "Captain," Lisa Park called from engineering, "we're down to 30%. Ammunition. The railguns are overheating and our missile tubes are jammed. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, reported Chief Medical Officer Carl Bennett over the intercom. "I've got 12 wounded crew members and we're running out of medical supplies." Morrison looked around his bridge. His people were exhausted, but their eyes still burned with fighting spirit. They had done the impossible by surviving this long, but the aliens were sending bigger ships now. "What do we have left to fight with?" he asked. Sam Rodriguez checked his weapons display. "Emergency ammunition only, sir. Maybe enough for 10 more minutes of fighting." Kate Sullivan looked back from her pilot station. "The escape pods are still functional. We could convert them into guided missiles like we discussed." Lisa Park nodded. "I can rig the maintenance drones with explosive charges. They're too small for the aliens to target easily." Morrison smiled. His crew was thinking like humans again. When conventional weapons failed, Humans got creative. They used whatever they could find and turned everyday tools into weapons of war. "Do it," he said. "Convert everything we can into weapons. If we're going down, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." The Korthak cruisers opened fire with concentrated plasma barrages. The space around the Defiance lit up like a deadly fireworks show. The human ship's armor was finally failing under the massive assault. Sections of hull plating peeled away as the intense heat melted through their defenses. But the humans refused to die quietly. Modified escape pods launched from the Defiance, like tiny missiles, each one packed with explosives and guided by desperate crew members who volunteered for one-way trips. The pods were too small and fast for the alien point defense systems to stop. One pod slammed into a cruiser's engine section. The explosion was small, but it hit exactly the right spot. The cruiser's main reactor went critical and tore the ship apart from the inside. Debris rained down on the other alien vessels. Captain Jorvac commanded the lead cruiser and watched in horror as his sister ship exploded. The humans were using their own escape systems as suicide weapons. What kind of beings chose death over surrender? "Sir," his tactical officer reported. "Small objects approaching from the human ship. They appear to be some kind of automated drones." The maintenance drones were barely the size of trash cans, designed to repair hull damage and clear debris. But Lisa Park had loaded them with every explosive she could find. They swarmed toward the Korthak ships like angry metal insects. The aliens tried to shoot down the tiny targets, but their weapons were built for ship-to-ship combat. The small drones slipped through their defensive fire and attached themselves to critical systems. Explosions rippled across the cruiser hulls as the drones detonated in engine ports, weapon mounts, and sensor arrays. 2 more cruisers were crippled by the drone attacks. Their crews panicked as fires spread through their ships and systems failed throughout their vessels. The humans were fighting with tools and garbage, turning maintenance equipment into weapons of war. Sergeant Amy Torres led a boarding party through a hull breach in one of the damaged cruisers. The 20-year-old Marine from Texas carried a shotgun and a bag full of grenades. Her team moved through the alien corridors like urban fighters, using every dirty trick they knew. The Korthak warriors were 7 feet tall, with forearms and natural armor plating. They carried energy rifles that could cut through steel. But in the narrow corridors of their own ship, their advanced weapons became a disadvantage. The rifles were too long to aim properly in tight spaces. Torres and her Marines used short-range weapons perfect for close combat. Shotgun blasts echoed through the corridors as the humans fought room by room. They threw grenades around corners and used improvised clubs when they ran out of ammunition. The aliens had never faced enemies who fought so brutally at close range. "These humans are insane," Captain Jorvac told his crew over the intercom. "They fight like wild animals. They use their own bodies as weapons." The boarding party captured the cruiser's computer core before retreating to their ship. Torres brought back crucial data about Korthak shield frequencies and weapon systems, information that could help humanity fight back. Admiral Vex Thule watched his carefully planned attack fall apart. 6 cruisers sent to destroy 1 small ship, and half of them were now combat ineffective. His crew whispered among themselves, speaking of things that hadn't been spoken in the Korthak Empire for centuries. They spoke of fear. The human ship was a wreck, barely holding together and almost out of weapons, but it still fought. Its crew still looked for ways to hurt their enemies. They refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. "What are these creatures?" Vex Thule asked his science officer. "They appear to be a warrior species, sir, but not like any we've encountered before. They don't fight for territory or resources. They fight because they refuse to stop fighting." The Defiance drifted in space, surrounded by alien wreckage and debris. Its hull was punctured in dozens of places and fires burned on 3 decks. But the human flag still flew from its communications mast, and its crew still prepared for the next attack. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing more Korthak ships moving toward them. His ship was dying, and his crew was exhausted, but they had proven something important. Humans didn't fight like other species. They fought like humans. The battle had been raging for 12 hours. The Defiance hung in space like a wounded animal, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere into the void. But Captain Morrison's crew refused to give up. They worked frantically to repair damage and prepare for the next wave of alien attacks. Admiral Vex Thule stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with growing unease. His fleet had lost 9 ships to a single human vessel. 9 ships destroyed by beings who used primitive weapons and fought like savages, his officers whispered behind his back, questioning his leadership for the first time in decades. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving signals from the human home world. Multiple ships are launching from their surface." Vex Thule studied the new contacts appearing on his screen. 11 more human ships were accelerating toward the battle zone. They were even more primitive than the first one, converted cargo haulers and mining vessels with weapons bolted to their hulls. "Pathetic," he said, trying to sound confident. 12 ships against my entire fleet. This changes nothing." But privately, Vex Thule felt a chill of worry. If these new ships fought with the same impossible determination as the first one, his fleet might actually be in danger. The thought was almost unthinkable, but the evidence floated around him in the form of burning alien wreckage. On Earth, the remaining human ships had launched despite orders to surrender. Captain Linda Davis commanded the converted cargo hauler, New York. Her ship was armed with mining explosives and industrial cutting tools. She had volunteered to follow Morrison into battle, knowing she would probably die. "This is Captain Davis to all human vessels," she broadcast. "We've watched the Defiance fight alone for 12 hours. Now it's time to show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity." The mining vessel Chicago was commanded by Captain Robert Stone. His ship carried drilling equipment powerful enough to cut through asteroids. He had loaded his cargo holds with explosive charges and sealed his crew into pressure suits. "Chicago ready for battle," he reported. "We'll show them how humans really fight." The research ship Phoenix carried Captain Helen Murphy and a crew of scientists. They had converted their laboratory equipment into experimental weapons and filled their sample containers with homemade explosives. "Phoenix standing by," Murphy said. "Let's make them regret coming to our system." The human reinforcements spread out as they approached the battle zone. They didn't fly in neat formations like civilized military forces. Instead, they moved like a pack of wolves, each ship taking a different approach to confuse the enemy. "Captain," Morrison watched his reinforcements arrive on his damaged screens. His heart swelled with pride as he saw his fellow humans coming to join the impossible fight. They could have stayed on Earth and waited for the surrender. Instead, they chose to fight. "Ben," he said to his communications officer, "patch me through to all human ships." Lieutenant Ben Hayes worked at his console, establishing contact with the approaching vessels. "You're connected, Captain." Morrison cleared his throat and spoke into his microphone. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Defiance. Welcome to the party. We've been keeping these aliens busy, but there's plenty of fight left to go around, Captain." Davis laughed over the radio. "We saw the fireworks from Earth, Morrison. Looks like you've been having all the fun." "How do you want to do this?" asked Captain Stone from the Chicago. Morrison looked at his tactical display. The Korthak fleet was repositioning to face the new threat. Admiral Vex Thule was bringing his heavy battleships forward, determined to crush this human resistance before it could inspire others. "We hit them where they don't expect it," Morrison said. "They're used to fighting big fleets in organized formations. We're going to swarm them like angry bees." The human ships accelerated toward different sections of the alien fleet. The New York headed for a group of cruisers on the left flank. The Chicago aimed for the heavy battleships in the center. The Phoenix and the other ships spread out to attack from multiple directions at once. Admiral Vex Thule watched the chaotic human attack pattern with growing confusion. "What are they doing? This isn't how space battles are fought," his tactical officer studied the display. "Sir, they're not following any recognized military doctrine. Each ship is acting independently, targeting different sections of our fleet." "It's madness," Vex Thule muttered. "How can we counter tactics that make no sense?" The first human ship to engage was the New York. Captain Davis flew her converted cargo hauler straight at a Korthak cruiser, ignoring the plasma fire that tore chunks from her hull. At the last second, she triggered the explosive charges in her cargo hold. The explosion was massive. The New York vaporized instantly, but the blast wave crippled the alien cruiser and damaged two nearby destroyers. Davis and her crew had turned their entire ship into a giant bomb. Captain Stone watched the New York sacrifice and gritted his teeth. "This is for Earth," he said, and flew the Chicago directly into the formation of Korthak battleships. The mining ship's drilling equipment carved through alien hulls like they were made of paper. Stone's crew manually detonated their explosive charges as they passed between the massive enemy vessels. The Chicago didn't survive the attack, but it left 3 battleships drifting and powerless. Admiral Vex Thule felt his confidence crumble as he watched human ship after human ship throw themselves at his fleet in suicidal attacks. But these weren't random acts of desperation. Each attack was carefully planned to cause maximum damage to his forces. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the humans are using their ships as weapons. They're sacrificing themselves to hurt us." "I can see that," Vex Thule snapped. "But why? What kind of species throws away their lives so easily?" The answer came from the Phoenix, as Captain Murphy led her research vessel in a strafing run against a line of Korthak destroyers. Her experimental weapons punched holes in alien hulls while her crew transmitted data back to Earth about alien weaknesses. "This is Captain Murphy to all human forces," she broadcast as her ship took heavy damage. "We're not throwing our lives away. We're buying time for our children. Every alien ship we destroy is one less threat to Earth." The Phoenix exploded in a ball of fire, but not before its crew had gathered crucial intelligence about Korthak technology and transmitted it to the surviving human vessels. By the end of the 4th wave of attacks, Admiral Vex Thule had lost 23 ships to the human fleet. His remaining vessels were damaged and demoralized. His crew looked at him with doubt in their eyes. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Korthak Empire was facing defeat, and they were losing to a species that fought with such determination that death itself became a weapon. The final phase of the battle began as Earth's moon cast long shadows across the battlefield. Wreckage from dozens of ships floated in space like a graveyard of metal and dreams. The Defiant still fought, held together by emergency welds and the iron will of its crew. 3 other human ships survived the brutal engagement, but they were all badly damaged. Admiral Vex Thule had committed his entire fleet to this battle. 37 ships remained from his original 50, but many were crippled and barely functional. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, still possessed massive firepower, but the admiral himself was shaken to his core. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender requests from several of our damaged vessels. Their crews want to retreat." Vex Thule's 4 hands clenched into fists. In 300 years of conquest, no Korthak crew had ever requested retreat. The humans had broken something fundamental in his warriors' spirits. They had shown that the Empire could be hurt, could be made to bleed. "Denied," he said through gritted teeth. "We finish this here and now. All ships converge on the human vessels. Destroy them completely." Captain Morrison watched the alien ships close in around his small fleet. The Defiance had maybe 10 minutes of power left in its dying engines. His crew was down to 18 people, the rest killed or too wounded to fight. But they were still human, and humans didn't quit. "Lisa," he called to his chief engineer, "how much power can you give me for one last run?" Lisa Park looked up from her console, her face streaked with grease and blood from a head wound. "I can overload the reactor, Captain. Give you everything we have for about 5 minutes, but after that we're dead in space." "Do it," Morrison said. "Kate, plot a course straight for their flagship. We're going to ram that thing." Pilot Kate Sullivan's hands shook as she entered the coordinates. The alien flagship was enormous, easily 50 times the size of their ship, but if they could hit it in the right spot, maybe they could crack its hull and cripple it. "Course laid in, sir," she said. "It's been an honor serving with you." Morrison stood up and looked around his bridge one last time. These people had followed him into hell and fought beside him for 18 hours straight. They deserved better than to die in the cold vacuum of space. "Ben," he said to his communications officer, "send a message to Earth. Tell them what we did here. Tell them we didn't surrender. Lieutenant Ben Hayes nodded and began transmitting. Message sent, Captain. Earth will know. The Defiance accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion, its damaged engines screaming in protest. The other surviving human ships followed, each one making their own desperate final attack. The mining vessel Detroit rammed a Korthak cruiser head-on. The research ship Boston used its last experimental weapon to punch a hole through a battleship's reactor core. Admiral Vexthul watched the human ships approach his flagship with a mixture of fear and respect. These beings fought with a courage he had never seen before. Even facing certain death, they refused to yield. All weapons, fire on the approaching vessels, he ordered. The Eternal Dominion's massive plasma cannons opened fire, lighting up space with deadly purple beams. The Defiance shook under the assault, its hull plates peeling away like paper. But Kate Sullivan held the ship on course, using every trick she knew to keep them flying. Hull breach on all decks, Lisa Park reported. We're losing atmosphere. Fast. Weapon systems failing, added Sam Rodriguez. But I've got one railgun left with 3 rounds. Morrison made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of trying to ram the flagship, he ordered his ship to slide along its hull, using their last ammunition at point-blank range to target the alien vessel's most vulnerable spots. The Defiance scraped against the Eternal Dominion's hull like a mouse attacking a cat, but the mouse had claws. The final railgun rounds punched through the flagship's armor and detonated deep inside the massive ship. Explosions rippled through deck after deck as the human weapons found ammunition stores and fuel tanks. Admiral Vexthul felt his ship shudder as the humans tore it apart from the inside. Alarms blared throughout the bridge as damage reports flooded in. The impossible had happened. A tiny human vessel had mortally wounded his mighty flagship. Abandon ship, he ordered as fires spread through the corridors. All crew to the escape pods. The Eternal Dominion broke apart in a series of massive explosions that lit up the solar system. The death of the flagship sent shockwaves through the remaining Korthak fleet. Their invincible admiral was dead, their greatest ship destroyed by beings they had dismissed as primitives. Captain Morrison floated in the wreckage of his bridge, barely alive but still conscious. Through a hole in the hull, he could see stars that looked like Earth's sun. Emergency crews from the surviving human ships were already moving to rescue survivors. The battle was over. 12 human ships had faced 50 alien warships and won. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer determination and the refusal to accept defeat. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Enslaved worlds that had submitted to Korthak rule began to rebel. Other, alien empires looked at humanity with new respect and caution. The age of easy conquest was over. Earth rebuilt the Defiance as a monument to human courage. Captain Morrison recovered from his injuries and became the first admiral of humanity's new interstellar fleet. His crew members were honored as heroes, who had saved not just their world but countless others. The Korthak Empire never recovered from the defeat. Their reputation for invincibility was shattered, and their conquered territories broke away one by one. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Never underestimate a species that refuses to surrender. Years later, when alien diplomats visited Earth, they always asked the same question. How could such a small fleet defeat such a powerful enemy? The answer was always the same. Humans don't fight to win. They fight because giving up is not an option. The stars belong to humanity now, and the universe would never be the same.